Guys, thank you for tuning in tonight to this exclusive YouTube review. I mean, I'm going to be reviewing Layton Exclusif. That's what I mean. All levity aside, welcome back to this latest installment of Real Scent Review. I'm going to be going over a special fragrance here tonight from the house of Parfums de Marly. This one is going to be Layton Exclusif. Now, we've all heard of Layton, the original Layton from Parfums de Marly. You know, the one that kind of smells like apple pie with some woody characteristics thrown into the background. Everybody knows that one. It's a widely popular fragrance, albeit slightly overpriced, or maybe quite overpriced, depending on who you ask. Well, this is Layton's younger brother, and I'm going to give you guys my opinion on this one, and I'm going to go over some differences and some similarities between this one and its older brother, Layton. So first off, disclaimer, this is clearly not the real bottle. This was a gift from a friend of mine. Actually, it's a 30 ml decant. So thank you very much, Javier. I owe you one. This is a 2017 release, and the nose behind this one is Hamid Meraty Kashani. He is also known for other works such as Opus 15 by Amouage. Actually, that's the only other work of his that I'm familiar with. But that's an amazing fragrance. Goodness gracious me, that is such an amazing fragrance. So anyway, he's a great perfumer. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now, going over the house of Parfums de Marly a little bit, this is actually the first PDM fragrance that I've ever reviewed. I did review Al Haramain's Detour Noir a while back, which is a clone of the original Layton. Parfums de Marly, the house was inspired by Louis XV, King of France, who was known for his wild parties at the Palace of Versailles. And one of his demands was that each room inside the palace was perfumed with a different scent. Also, another one of his outrageous demands was that every fountain in the palace would flow with literal perfume. So Parfums de Marly, their whole idea was to revive that sense of importance of perfumery. Now, if I'm being totally honest with you guys, which I always am, Parfums de Marly, they're not my favorite fragrance house, and I'll tell you why. I find that a lot of their fragrances are just kind of overly cloyingly sweet. I feel like a lot of their fragrances are kind of just designed in order to be bold, just for the sake of being bold and cloyingly sweet and very present. There's a huge presence to a lot of their fragrances. I feel like they lack complexity, some of them. I feel like they are kind of just designed in order to make a statement as opposed to telling a story, if that makes any sense. And I feel like their prices are just a little bit outrageous as well for what they're offering. Now, they definitely have some exceptions, like Hamdani. That's a freaking awesome fragrance. That is a really good fragrance, honestly. But in my opinion, as far as the house of PDM goes, it's kind of like the exception to the rule. Now, I will be honest with you again. I'll continue to be honest with you guys. I really do like this Layton Exclusif. I like it a whole lot better than the original Layton, and I'm going to explain why after I go over the note breakdown. So what I actually detect in this fragrance is the following. In the top, I get some green apple, almond, and geranium. In the mid, I get some vanilla and lavender. And in the dry down, I get some guaiac wood and leather. So this starts off with a dose of green apple. It's a little bit tart. It's a little bit sweet as well. It's fruity, definitely, but it's not overly fruity. If you think of like YSL EDP, that's an overtly, fruity green apple type of opening. It's not quite that sweet or synthetically fruity in this one, but you do get that apple note. And that's definitely paired with some almond in this. So we get a powdery kind of nuttiness, and that's coming from the almond, like I said here in the beginning. It's a really nice mixture. In the opening, because of the almond specifically, this kind of reminds me of the L'Homme Ideal line from Guerlain. Not exactly the same, but it's making my mind go there, kind of. And there's a little bit of geranium. I think it's geranium. There's like a slightly camphorous floral tinge in the opening here. Now in the mid, yes, we get some of that vanilla. It's a typical vanillic sweetness. The vanilla in this is, you know, the run-of-the-mill sweet vanilla, although it's not quite cloyingly sweet. It's not as sweet as something like, I don't know, Spice Bomb Extreme by Victor and Rolf, for example, but the vanilla is definitely here, and it's very obvious. It's very detectable. Now, there's also a little bit of lavender in the mid here. The lavender is going to lend some warm, kind of spicy, floral nuances to the mid. It does smell really good, although it might be a little bit sweet in the opening here. If you don't like sweet fragrances, you know, that's something to consider, especially in the opening part here. Now, the dry down of this fragrance is where it really starts to differentiate itself from the original Layton. In the dry down of this one, I get some guaiac wood, which is going to lend some smoky woodiness, to put it very simply. And then it's mixed with some leather. The leather is barely detectable, but it's there. It's kind of just like a smooth leather. There's nothing dirty. There's nothing animalic about it. But in the dry down, I definitely get that mixture of like a smoky woodiness and a smooth leather. That's where it really becomes a different beast altogether from Layton, the original. Now, having said that, in the beginning here, in the opening, they're almost identical. The original Layton and this Layton Exclusif, for the first, I don't know, hour or so, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, they're very, very similar fragrances. There are some subtle differences in the opening part. So this one here, Layton Exclusif, has way less of that camphorous mintiness. A lot of people complain about the original Layton being too minty in the opening part. The mintiness does also exist in Layton Exclusif here, but it's toned down considerably to the point where, you know, it's there, but it's not overbearing. Another difference, this has a definite almond characteristic. There's a nutty creaminess going on in the opening here that I don't really detect in the original Layton. So as far as the differences in the opening of the two fragrances, I've just mentioned them. They are very similar in the opening. In the dry down, they are very different fragrances. So the original Layton dries down with that vanillic apple. It's a vanillic fruitiness, kind of reminds some people of an apple pie, with some vague woody nuances going on in the background. This one here, Layton Exclusif, does retain a little bit of that vanillic apple fruitiness, but in addition, we get that beautiful smoky guaiac wood and leather. Now, the dry downs of the two fragrances are pretty different. Like I said, this dries down far less sweet than the original Layton. Very woody, smoky, and a little bit leathery in the dry down of this one. I think this is the superior scent here. I much prefer this to Layton, the original. Now, there's a couple of things I want to go over here. I just want to clear some things up. This is not an animalic fragrance. If you read some reviews out there, a lot of people will try to have you think that this is an animalic, very challenging fragrance. And admittedly, there is a difference between the experience of somebody who is totally new to fragrances and that of somebody who has been dealing with fragrances for many years, who has smelled thousands of different fragrances. All right, admittedly, there's going to be a difference between the experience and the tolerance of those two people. I can objectively say that this is not a challenging fragrance whatsoever. It is a little bit darker than the original Layton, yes, but I mean, there's nothing challenging. There's nothing animalic about this. Anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. The second thing I would like to bring up is this. You know, it is definitely different than the original Layton, but at the same time, it is very much a flanker of the original Layton. What I mean is, I think it might be slightly redundant to own both. And if I'm going to just lay it all down on the table here, I think if you already own Layton, the original, you're probably not going to miss this one. If you already have the original, you probably don't need to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on this one because that's what it costs. might not be worth it to you. I will say this, though, as a final thought. If you do not own Layton, the original, but you are interested in purchasing Layton, I would recommend that you just go for this one over the original. Why? This is a much fuller scent. It's more complex. It's more interesting. It is not nearly as linear as the original Layton. The performance is also better. It has that woody, smoky dry down. It's a little bit more mature than the original Layton, but it is still very, I don't want to say mass appealing, but it's versatile. It's a versatile fragrance. More so for the cool weather, depending on who you ask. Maybe more suited to, a semi-formal occasion as opposed to wearing to work every day, whereas the original Layton would be kind of more suited to, clubbing, more social experiences, social events, nights out with friends, things like that. But having said all that, this is not worlds apart from the original Layton. Like I said, if you already own the original Layton, you probably don't need to pick this one up. Because another reason for that is the price. This is just outrageously priced. On FragranceNet right now, this costs like $280 US for a 75 milliliter bottle. That's nuts, guys. That's nuts. If you already have the original, you don't need to pick this one up. But I will say, again, if you don't own the original and you're considering picking up Layton, I think it is worth the investment to just go for this one right over the original Layton for all the reasons I've mentioned before. It's fuller, a little bit more mature, yet it retains that versatility. Anyway, guys, that has been my review of Layton Exclusif. One of my favorite fragrances from the house of Parfums de Marly, despite the fact that they're not really one of my favorite houses. I will admit, this is a nice fragrance. It is really cool. I like wearing it, and I hope you guys enjoy wearing it as well. Hope you've enjoyed the review. Until next time, keep it real.